Press this button. See what happens. Press
Aw,
this button.
is
See
that
what
kids
happens.
playing behind you, Randy?
Yeah, they were racing through.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Oh, we still, all of our parks here are still closed, so we don't hear those sounds very often.
Well, here
I thought
we've cured it. So
COVID's over in Texas. I thought Uncle Doug is letting you guys do some stuff now, Zoe.
Oh, yeah, maybe I think as of like tomorrow at midnight, parks open, and then in a couple weeks we'll start seeing patios slowly open. I think we're allowed 5 people on a patio kind of thing. So it's going to be a matter of how many vaccinations are done and how many I guess cases there are. So we're still quite a few per day. So it's still lockdown. It's still hard on the kiddies and hard on us adults, but we'll get through it, won't we?
Yeah, we're in a little better place than you are, so we're starting to kind of get things better. But anyways, just for our American friends, the context of Uncle Doug Ford is the Premier of Ontario, i.e., Governor. And if you recall, Rob Ford,
yes.
it's his brother, and they're kind of. And so sometimes, well, my sister who lives in Ontario refers to him as Uncle Doug. Uncle Doug says we can do this now.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's
he does have a few nicknames, but I don't want to say that.
Oh, I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does. But anyway, well, let us actually get started here because, hey, why not? We are going to be rocking and rolling today, talking about the wins.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough. And every time I step up in the building, everybody hands go up.
There we are. Our theme song for Keisha's right into it. She is right into this, which is great. So yeah, that's what we're going to do today, is celebrating the wins. It's been interesting noting so many of the different conversations that have occurred over the last few months, and so many of them really important, talking about many of the issues that aren't so positive, whether it's issues around equity, issues around, just all of the challenges that we're currently facing, and those are essential conversations to have, super important to have, and I'm glad we're having them. But this conversation is slightly different, and I think as we're sort of transitioning into our summer and so forth, I think we want to just sort of, for a lot of people as their year's wrapping up, think about celebrating it. So I'm excited to have this conversation for the next 43 minutes or so, and allow some folks to share some of their insights, and also anybody that's joining us in the Zoom room, or if anybody pops in our YouTube stream as we're streaming it, they can certainly be part of this contribution as well. I want to first acknowledge the Treaty 6 is the land that I live, work, and play on, and I'm grateful to be able to live that. It's the homeland of the Cree, the Lakota, the Dakota, and Métis nations. And again, we in Canada are working very hard at trying to reconcile many of the wrongs that we have done towards our First Nations people. And so one of the things that we are trying to do, at least I should say I'm trying to do more, is paying attention to them and acknowledging our First Nations people in this small way. Further to that, I want to just sort of acknowledge the partnership that currently exists right now between Dell Technologies and ALP. That's the part I am. I work for Advanced Learning Partnerships, and we've partnered with Dell to provide professional learning across Texas specifically, So that's what this is, sort of the funding or the source behind these sessions, and we do a number of these different kinds of sessions that you can have access to. As you see there's webinars that are continuing to happen, recordings of them, and so there's lots of opportunity for you to connect with people across Texas and beyond. I mean, that's why we've invited some people who are joining us today from outside of Texas, because we'd love to be able to continue to build this community. Obviously, we're recording, we're streaming, and people are graciously accessing the content even after we share. So I don't have to probably say this because you've only been on, like, this is, I feel like saying stuff about Zoom now is like when you're on an airplane and people tell you how to put a seatbelt on. Like, as if you haven't figured it out by now, I don't know if it's going to happen. But what I will say is I do like to point out the reactions button. I think it's a perhaps maybe underutilized feature of Zoom, where people can feel engaged, especially on these more short calls where there's not a ton of interaction from a whole bunch of other people, but certainly it's just a simple way in which you can show people that you're engaged, particularly for those people who don't want to have their camera on, which I completely respect. It's just one way to say, hey, I'm listening, I'm with you. That was a good idea, or whatever else. So have a look at that and use that as you will. And again, the spirit of this kind of a session is to learn with and from each other. And so as much as I've invited 5 very special people, we have some other people joining us who are more than welcome to share, and we'll invite them to add their wins as well in that spirit. But I am very excited to be able to share with you these 5 wonderful people, and I will give my quick introduction to them, and then when each of them are going to launch into responding, they can perhaps add a little bit more context. But first we have coming to you all the way from Ontario, Canada, is my good favorite vegan, I'll call her, Zoe Brannigan Pipe.
I've got Canada in my pocket, a little bit of history.
There we go. Everybody's got a little bit of theme music, so it's coming. It's coming.
Michael Mitchell. That was Michael Mitchell.
What's that?
I was
you knew.
naming
Look at
Michael
that. You even knew.
Like, come on, I'm an elementary school teacher. I know that song.
That's true. That's old school elementary. All right. Well, on the screen beside her is this man. I don't know if that's your walk-up song or not, Randy. Anyway, Randy Rogers, Mr. Rogers himself, who is, as we were talking about before we went live, is 14 days from putting a little bow on this part of his career. He's been working in public education for 30 years, and he's decided to do something else. I'm not sure what he's going to do, but I know it'll be exciting. And also, in keeping with the state of Texas, we have none other than Amber Tiemann.
She boy DeVito Lansky. We gon' play this one every year for the Dallas Cowboys. Let's do it. Dallas on the road.
One of our top Dallas Cowboy fans, more so though, a little bit Troy Aikman, not a little bit. That's why she has 8. If you noticed, her Twitter handle is Amber8. That's what that 8 is for, is Troy Aikman. So there she is. And next to Amber is a former colleague of mine and still friend. And this music won't probably make sense to anybody, but see if you can figure out, Keishla, even see if you can figure out what this music represents.
We're a Hallmark movie sitting on the shelf. 101.
All right. So what you need to know about about Keishla is that she is an avid Hallmark movie fan. I think it was the first time that we ever worked together. We were in Surrey, British Columbia, and what's her name, Aunt Becky, who got into big trouble for other stuff, but she wasn't in big trouble at the time, was filming a Hallmark movie beside the hotel where we were staying at, and they had the whole thing set up, and we went outside, and she was like, she was quite smitten with the whole experience of this Hallmark thing, and they had the fake snow there and everything. And it's just always like, really? Here's this black woman in Texas just all over Hallmark movies? Like, I don't understand that at all. But I thought it was fascinating. It was delightful. So, and Keishla is a longtime ed tech leader, not just in Texas, but across North America. And she's had various roles within public education and outside of it. And I'm glad that she's here today. And finally, the last member of our panel here, is Michael, and here's Michael's theme song. Let me just see if I can cue it up for you. This is kind of important. So Michael is an instructional leader. What's that?
I think I know exactly why you picked that song, Dean.
So the first time I met Michael, he was like, it was in a conference setting, and like he stood out. Actually, not just him, but he and his one of his counterparts from his school division were just dressed beautifully, and so that's what I think of him as. Just, I've only met Michael that one time, and so we talk on Zoom quite frequently. But he's a sharp dressed guy, and he's got the hair to go with it as well. Anyway, that was a silly long introduction, but again, I am so grateful for all of my good friends who are willing to take the time to be part of these kinds of conversations. And as I mentioned earlier, we want to celebrate. We want to talk about things that have been successful this year, things we've seen that are giving us hope and encouragement. And again, not to dismiss any of the challenges that exist. They are great. They are many, but this is what this conversation is about. So I'm going to start with this question, and I'm just going to, maybe for starters, I'll just walk through the order of that I kind of have our people in here. And I just would love a specific story. And again, bonus points if you actually name a teacher and give us a specific shout out, that would be great. But if it's just more that you want to just keep that one anonymous, that's fine too. But I'll start with Zoe. Zoe is actually in the classroom. And so she works directly with students, but also supports teachers and all kinds of other things. So we'll start with Zoe, that question. Can you share a story about a teacher or a student who's experienced success this year?
Yes, but I want to, I want to put this out to, I don't know if years ago, I think it was, 28 or something, 2008. I was in at EduCon. I think Dean, you were there, and the Clever Sheep was presenting. We were presenting on the classroom or the school of the future, and we had tons of people there, and they're designing things, and we're talking about like what schools would look like in 10 years from now and 15 years from now, right? Which is where we're sitting now. Well, maybe not that much, but and one of the biggest, I guess, moments was when people were talking about imagine a classroom where kids could be in all, within their group, their cohort, and can access teachers who they need at the time, depending on their skill, depending on their level, using perhaps some kind of technology. They could tap into an expert. Those were the things versus that teachers having to come to them, or versus students having to move around. And these were some of the big aha, like imagine that day if that could happen. And and then we fast forward to 2021, and my job, and I'll give you context, is I'm an itinerant, or they call it a special assignment teacher for enrichment and special ed students. And originally my job really entailed me to go to like many schools and go and visit and support students and support teachers. And then 2020 and 2021 hit, and we all know what happened, and kids are in cohorts, and kids can't leave their classrooms, and they can't move around and such. And all of a sudden, what are kids doing? They're accessing the teachers that they need at the time that they need it from their classrooms. So literally a teacher might be teaching math, but a student might be sitting in the back of their classroom accessing an enrichment program, or another student might be in the other part of the classroom accessing their ELL or ESL program. And I had this aha moment going, I'm pretty sure it was about 10 years ago, we were wishing that this would happen, that kids could access the people that need to get that differentiated instruction in any way that they needed, right? And it kind of was around the same time Saul Kahn's book, what was it called? The One Room Schoolhouse came out. And now I'm reading this other one called Grasp. I don't know if you see it behind me, by Sanjay Sarma, which is the MIT person behind the whole open courseware movement, saying it should be easier to learn, not like literally easier to learn, but like take the barriers away. So if a kid needs that expert math, they can access it. So long story short, my job now, I'm being, compared to say a year ago, more than a year ago now, but I'm able to, I can see, 80 students per week can access me right from their classrooms, right from their homes, right from wherever they are, from all over the city. They can, and it's absolutely amazing, the relationship that I'm able to develop with those students now, in comparison to me only being able to see them once every 2 weeks, when I could drive to each of their schools and meet with them for half an hour here and there, right? So the tech in that sense has really, really helped, and kids who need it can access. And so, that was for me, yeah, there's a success here, and I hope that we can continue these kinds of things. And and when we talk about students, and I don't really have a specific teacher to mention, but I do have a student, and I did ask their permission today if I could talk about this. But at the beginning of the school year, I was trying to figure out the best way I could support leaders, our student voice, our student leaders, and our teacher leaders as well. And so I started developing these, I don't know, like if I want to call them PowerPoints, but kind of collections. I called them the dailies. And there would be a daily book or a daily math question or a daily something. And kids, well, I put it out to the kids, like, who wants to run this? Like, I can't run them all. I don't have the time. And so a couple kids started saying, I want to do the dailies. I'm going to do a daily every single day. I'm going to pick something cool. And so this one student, Prachi, she decided to start doing it right at the beginning of the year, a different math brain teaser, puzzle, you name it, for different grades. And she eventually called it Prachi's Puzzles, and we put it up on Twitter, and she's made a blog ever since. And now it's got to the point where, teachers from across the school board are like, can we get Prachi to come and do Prachi's Puzzles in our class now too? Like, she'll present on Teams to different, she's in a remote class school right now, but, and this is a student in the 7th grade, right? That has just decided, I need that leadership, and I can't be in a school. I can't be in a physical building. She really needed that chance to be a leader outside. And it's hard, like when you're in remote, like who you're going to be a leader, how you're going to be a leader in this context. So these dailies helped her. And so, I'm so proud that she's taken that on. So that's my student example. And right now I put it up on Twitter for anybody who has kids or still working with kids out there. On the latest Prachi's challenge is a Minecraft build. And so she has created some blueprints, and some kids all over the district are now using her blueprints to, for a competitive fun before the end. And our school year, we still have 7 weeks left. So we're not quite there at the end yet, but so those are my two big, like, I think that there are some.
All right. Is that me or Zoe? Who died?
That's it. I'm good. I'm done. Can you guys all hear me?
Yep.
Dean says, okay. All right, good. I don't know. Dean I don't know if Dean might be stuck.
Yeah, I think he's frozen.
All right.
I will say, Zoe, just to kind of keep the conversation going, similarly to what you said about your ability to be able to have access and touch and reach to multiple students in a way that you had limitations on because of the going to the individual sites. I think we've seen that level of, in the work that I do, having an opportunity. I had an opportunity with one of our districts I work with in California, and teachers who never got to collaborate together before because of remote learning. And they I think they would have never thought about it. They would have been trying to figure out, how do I come to your school to collaborate with you? Or how do you come to my school to collaborate with me? And then we had teachers collaborating across 9-10 campuses.
It's amazing. Yeah.
It was something that was just so easy to do, and the level of intention and care that they brought to that work and thoughtfulness has just been really powerful. And I think they had this opportunity to capture these ideas in spaces and places that they would not have been able to do so before, because we had such a limited construct of what a professional learning experience would need to look like for teachers.
And if I can just add to that, I don't want to take up all the time, but I just wanted to add to what you just said. I think the pandemic has also brought in this sense of compassion when we're doing it, right? I mean, almost the cynical nature that some of us can get into, and PD and this and that, but kind of went out the door, because we're all just wanting to be so caring and compassionate to one another, and understanding what we're going through with our families and our work level. And that, so when we get into these professional organizations, we're, like you just said, we're so willing to help and to like connect. Whereas I think in the prior to all this, it was like, all right, here we go again. That seems to have changed. I don't feel that anymore. And I feel like people, it's just that compassion is just so prevalent. So
Awesome. Thank you for continuing to going while I suffered my little technical issues. Mr. Rogers, what stories of success might you want to share with us?
Well, I've got a couple that are, you said get bonus points, so I shout out to specific teachers. One of our middle school teachers at Kitty Hawk Middle School, her name is Misty Farrell. She's a 6th grade ELAR teacher, and one of the things that she talked about was, and I think this is a big theme with teachers in our district, I'm sure around the world, is it really forced them to get out of their comfort zone, and their normal routines for doing things wouldn't work in the online or hybrid environment that they were in. So she mentioned the fact that she was so excited because she had to find different ways of getting her students engaged in the writing process, and she found a site that some of y'all may know about called Story Jumper, but she was very excited because it took her kids from just being able to write a story and give it to the teacher for a grade to actually publishing, she said, they had the opportunity to become published authors online. And that was very exciting to her. We've been talking about a lot of these kind of texts for years, and teachers hear it and they're like, okay, but then they go back into their routine. So that was a nice thing. And it was good to see the excitement. It's gratifying to see, we talked about how powerful audience is and stuff. And so she discovered that. One of my teachers, Tana Burnett at Wagner High School, who is a life skills teacher, special ed teacher, kids with a lot of really significant challenges, talked about one of the things that she said she thought it was a small thing, but she was really proud of it. She learned how to do slides that were drag and drop, so that her kids who are nonverbal in a lot of instances, or absolutely can't use a keyboard and type, could actually respond to classroom prompts and questions and things like that. She said she spent a great deal of time creating these slides, but it really paid off, and that she got interaction and responses from these very special kids that she had never got before. So again, it just moving teachers out of their comfort zone. And I can share dozens and dozens of those stories, but those are two I really liked.
And then, and I love the fact that you talk about the fact that they realized, like, it enabled something that couldn't have been done otherwise, right? Like, it's one thing to get excited because of technology, because it maybe is cool, or that's all fine and kind of maybe is an entry point. But when they see, like, without this, we couldn't have done these things, right? Like, they weren't going to be able to learn in the same way. And that's when you start, most of us have lived our lives kind of embracing technology in one way, shape, or form, really want to get people to see, like, that's why we use this stuff, is because it seriously makes a difference in people's lives. So that's awesome. Thanks, Randy. Amber, what's happening? Oh, sorry, go ahead. Add one more thing.
I'm sorry. I was just going to throw in one more because I just thought her story was really cool. Her name is, it's the same theme that you just shared about things you couldn't do otherwise. Her name is Jeannie Alvarado, and she teaches at Kirby Middle School. And she had a student who was hospitalized during this year. And that student She talked about how exciting it was that student was able to, and the student was exciting for the student too, to still stay connected to her class using the online classroom that we had through Canvas and using Zoom video conference, and that the student just got really motivated to actually succeed in that really challenging environment and just became an incredible student this year. But yeah, again, something we couldn't do if we didn't have these technologies available.
Lots of bonus points for Randy right now, because that's 3 pretty clear shout outs. Amber, what can I'm not going to ask you to top it, but I'm just going to ask you to share what
no
stories
pressure.
of success
No pressure.
you
Thanks,
share about
Randy.
teachers. Yeah.
Well, and again, kind of like Zoe, the context of my world, elementary principal turned tech director in the middle of a pandemic that involved a move and a job change and a district change. And it feels as if everything from grocery shopping to nails to profession is different in my world. I think that the thing that I'm most proud of when I walked away from my teachers, and not that the staff, the entire staff, Randy Rogers at Witt Elementary, is not already just incredible, and I would have been able to brag on them anyway, but recognizing how many times I had to walk down and say, hey, the thing you did today is not what you're going to do tomorrow, and it's probably going to change next week when those numbers change. But I watched these teams of teachers who were so confident and strong in their subject matter and their content matter and the way that they had built relationships traditionally have to flip everything. And I mean, I left in the middle of October, and by that point, my my second grade team had changed 3 times, in the sense that we had 3 virtual classrooms, then we had this rotation, and now these kids are coming back, and now you've got to do this switch. And they went from teaching ELA to math to self-contained. It just was so incredible to watch how they were able to pivot and make those changes without ever quitting. They never gave up. They never stopped. We may have broke down, but we never didn't do what our students needed us to do. And to see that, when just in the traditional sense of a principal, there are seasons of life where teachers get a little crankier than others, and there are changes that they don't want to engage in, and you just kind of buy them an ice cream sandwich and we keep on moving, right? They were so flexible and amazing this year, and watching our parents be reschooled and what it meant to school, and the appreciation that they had for our staff was just incredible. But it's because of that positivity. It's because of the fact that they recognized everything was different for everyone, and this is just what we have to do. And I think that's so powerful to have gotten to witness as a building principal and recognize that it wasn't easy and it wasn't fun, and it definitely wasn't what they had anticipated happening, but it's just what we did. And then now in this new role as a technology director for a school district, everyone's responsibilities have changed. You no longer are a 3rd grade math teacher. Now you're a 3rd grade math teacher who may teach virtually, and then you've got to also pick up some small group interventions. Even the techs in my department that are used to going in and troubleshooting hardwire and switches, and does this connect here and how does that work? They're walking parents through logging into Google Classroom, and here's how you get to the stream where the assignments are. It just has put everybody in such a place of flexibility, and I would even maintain positivity, because you just don't get to be cranky. Everyone's experiencing a pandemic. Everyone's experiencing unprecedented experiences. So to see them be able to respond makes me so proud to be a public educator, because I just can't imagine another industry that was able to flip on a dime and still do what we do and do it pretty well.
Yeah, it's tired, and it's like, it's anytime you go through a crisis, it's never fun going through it, but I hope afterwards you realize, gee, we did hard things, and we can do hard things, and not that we want to maintain that level of crisis and craziness, but it hopefully makes people appreciate what they have done. And again, I think it's leaders like yourself, Amber, and I know you're a big advocate of that, of making sure they know that they're valued, that they're appreciated. And that's not always the case, for sure, everywhere. But for those people that have that kind of leadership and can do that, I think that's fantastic. Keishla, what's your story?
I just want to say thanks to Amber. I mean, as a teacher, but you literally brought me to tears in your statement, and you are absolutely, that was so empowering. Thank you.
No, Dean, I kind of shared in the gap there when you had a little bit of the technical glitch.
Yeah,
just,
I wondered if you did.
Very specifically to, watching teachers, collaborate and meet those needs. I'd also like to speak, I am not a person who has school-age children at home, but I saw successes in my family and friends around me, dealing with, figuring out how to manage their full-time remote jobs. Oftentimes, their jobs either went into complete remote status, and juggling sort of being a part-time teacher at the same time. So I would like to send a very special shout out to my sister-in-law, Georgiana. She had a set of twins the year before the pandemic started, and then had a 8-year-old, 9-year-old at the same time, and just really kind of making sure that he was up on this computer in these Zoom classrooms and figuring out like, what does he need and how am I juggling my work? And, I'm really impressed with the way that parents leaned in. And I think it opened their eyes a bit more to what teachers do day in and day out. Because sometimes I think we all have our nostalgic glasses on of when I was in school and how it went when I was there. And so just kind of creating that level of openness, and to Zoe's point, that empathy, that we're all kind of going through this. And so I've just witnessed really great points, and even sharing on social media from friends and family how they've been juggling this time, and how it's just really created a greater sense of even more so than how they feel after coming off of summer break. Like every parent is ready for those kids to go back to school, but I think they have a totally different appreciation coming out of it. And I think that in struggle, learning how to appreciate what is a huge success.
Absolutely. Thank you, Keishla. And Michael, I've been able to follow your journey for the last year. I wonder what you wanted to share with us today around those successes.
Yeah, thanks, Dean. Our district was virtual from, I guess, comparable to you all, was probably March all the way until March. So March 2020 to March 2021, we were 100% virtual. And then when the district made the decision to return to in-person instruction, it was in a concurrent hybrid high flex model. So every teacher in the district is teaching virtual and face-to-face students at the same exact time. And so very similar stories where it's that the challenges the teachers had to face and overcome were incredible. And we had the same mindset as leaders of the district. We had the same mindset that we have never been in a situation like this. Is it our right to tell a teacher how to handle this situation? And so, one decision we made was to capture these teachers teaching in these environments and building those communities of practice, so that way they could collaborate and discuss what's working for them and why did it work for them. And that way they could share out and they could teach and they could, provide that leadership that we could no longer provide. Because when I went to university, I taught face-to-face kids in 3rd grade. I don't know how to teach both virtual and online, virtual and face-to-face at the same time. And it's not fair for me to say, here's how you should do it. So we captured these teacher moments, and a few, Jennifer Mott, she's a 3rd grade teacher at one of the schools I support. And, not the most tech savvy person, but we would meet every single week for an hour. Every hour, she would ask questions. She would sit there, she would implement things, she would try things. She took a lot of risks. And it was incredible to see the growth. And like I think it was Dean just said it, looking back, that's when she'll realize how much she grew. In it, she's like, oh, this is terrible. It was stressful. It was a lot. Looking back, she's really going to realize how much she grew. I also want to call out for the administrators too, like our principals and assistant principals. I mean, just as Amber was stating, I can only imagine how tough it was to tell teachers next week's going to be different, or the next hour is going to be different. And that learning curve for them as well to step up and provide that sturdy hand of guidance to say, this is the direction we're going to head and we're all going to be all right. It's going to be tough, but we're going to make it through. Another teacher I'd like to give a huge shout out to is Felicia Ellis at another school I support. We started capturing those teacher moments on video. She was one that stepped right up. She said, I want to talk about what I think this is going to look like. And, I spoke with her yesterday, and things have completely changed. What she said the very first time was, this is how I'm going to set my classroom up. This is where my computers are going to be. This is where my camera is going to be. And now she's doing something completely different. Again, just having that very flexible mindset of knowing I'm doing this to support my students was just an amazing thing to witness. Student story, back in March 2020, when we first closed down, one of the schools I was supporting, we had this student who missed 90 plus days even before the pandemic hit. And no one knew why she was missing so many days. And as soon as we went virtual, she started showing up to these classes. And everybody was kind of confused, like, why did she not show up before? Like, she wasn't coming in person. She wasn't coming to physical classrooms. But and she was retained, I think 3 or 4 times. Like, it was just a really tough situation for this young lady. And when we went virtual, every day she was there, everything was getting done. She never missed a day, never missed any assignment. And we found out that she was, taking care of her siblings, and she couldn't get to school in time because she had to worry about her baby sister, her baby brother. And she was the only adult figure they had in their lives to get them ready for their school day. But being virtual provided that accessibility she needed to be successful in education. So one thing that I thought was I always think about that story to kind of when I need that uplifting moment.
I think that's super important.
That's a great one. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I was going to say really important to think about all of the kids who when we talk about going back to normal, there were a lot of kids that school didn't serve appropriately based on a myriad of reasons and factors. And so, hopefully this helps everybody to think about, when we do get back to when we say normal is in our ability to be around each other, we then could think about, are we being around each other in the right constructs at the right times for the right reasons? And then are we creating the space for those opportunities for that student, like the one you mentioned, to be successful based on what their conditions are? And so hopefully we will learn the spirit of flexibility as we move forward. So I think that's super important to remember.
I wanted to mention too, just from Michael just struck, a chord in that I've seen, maybe about, I don't know, 300 or 400 students per week, a lot. And I've had several say, like this has been help them. They have like high anxiety. Some of them are special ed because of anxiety issues, and taking away some of that school anxiety, that social anxiety has helped them refocus on school. And so for them, it really helped them. There's many cases, not all. And I do think, I know we're not talking negative here, but, I still think even them, they need the social interactions. They need the after school stuff, all of that. But the school itself for them, the online worked. And, maybe moving forward, I'm not sure how it will be, but yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Like Zoe, my nephew, for him, the remote didn't work super great for him. And it was nice that the school was able to say, hey, for that small group of kids that we can do this safely, they brought them back. And it was really supportive of him. And so I think it's just that level of attentiveness and intentionality to really understand each student individually in their needs, to be able to say, because we have a greater understanding of how we can use remote learning, we can construct experiences that are supportive of kids where they need it, and teachers.
Learning environments, right?
I hope that if nothing else, one of the successes that all educators can take away from this is the recognition of the uniqueness of situations. And it's super cliche that should be true all of the time, but you get into the business of living and you forget how to do life. And for teachers to be taken out of that comfort lane and now have to look at everything with a different lens. How do I reach my Down syndrome students when they don't have an attention span on a Zoom? How do I still increase speech goals for students who don't use speech? There were challenges that presented unique opportunities to connect and learn with both students and families. I think Michael's example is perfectly spot on. And again, instead of being annoyed as you would be in a traditional classroom that she just didn't come to school, what a unique opportunity to be able to see how education can change lives if we meet them where they are and not assume they've got to come to where we've always been.
So let me transition to our next question, which kind of is going to focus on maybe more practical, maybe more specific, but and Randy kind of already touched on one in his share earlier. But what technologies? Maybe it's a piece of software, hardware, website, and again, it doesn't have to be the greatest, biggest thing, but just something they thought like, wow, that was kind of cool that people are using this particular tool or resource in a way that maybe we hadn't seen before. So let me start with, I'm going to go to Michael, start with Michael this time. So any, again, you don't have to go into a big detail about it, but thank you, Daisy. Daisy's mentioning Google Classroom. And so for many people, that's a really powerful tool. Michael, what's your tool or hardware, software, or technology of choice that you think has made a big difference in the last 12 months?
Yeah, I'm going to give you more of just a general idea of what I would hope comes out of this, or what I'm most selfishly what I'm most interested in seeing. I'm hoping to see the use of TikTok-ish type programs beginning to be more of a learning platform. I think, you know, a lot of times, you know, we get so caught up in swiping and looking at things really quick. And I think we still stop enough to say, what did I get from that? And I think if we can harness that ability of not only our students, but our teachers as well, that could be a very powerful thing to say. I just watched a 30-second video on how to add an assignment to Google Classroom. I can do that myself now. And I hope that that's kind of where we had, I think, you know, beginning of the pandemic, it was all those dances on TikTok, and you saw all over social media, people were posting them, but you learned something on, it may not be an academic thing, and it was for all in entertainment, but you learned how to do a dance from watching snippets of 30-second videos. And I think that really showed me, you know, we can really harness in education as professional development designers and implementers, we can harness that power and say, why do we give an hour and a half professional development to a teacher when we could maybe do it in 30 seconds? Why do that to them? And so that's kind of what I kind of hope to see, what technologies, some use of that micro learning, but like super micro, like whatever is beyond micro, like just making it super, super short, and, you know, harnessing that for our students and for our teachers, I think could be a really powerful experience for everyone.
Well, and just the idea that we have, you know, we have identified learning as a seat time between 8 and 3 o'clock, or whatever time it is, it's this many days, like just sort of getting rid of that notion that learning is constrained by that, and so that we can offer like long, short, we can a variety of that. So I love that idea. Amber, what's your technology of choice you want to share?
One of the pieces that Crandall ISD that I've just gotten to contribute to, that's not my brainchild, but they did for their PD hours for some continuing credits, something they called it In the Gnome, and it's just a Google site, but they linked to all these different levelings of PD. And I think in a way that they had never gotten to do before, they were able to uniquely meet everybody's need. There was an expectation that you complete X amount of hours, but they sandwiched this in between Christmas, New Year's, and when we came back to give everybody that 10-day exposure time to stay at home. So teachers got to do continuing education via a site that had just tons and tons and tons of opportunities, with everything from Apple certifications to Google certifications to classroom management. But it honored teacher choice, it honored teacher voice. It allowed the technology department to scaffold everything from the top to the bottom. And again, in traditional PD, I could have offered 1 to 2 sessions because it would be just me. But now you just have this opportunity for people in the comfort of their own home to not feel challenged or intimidated or terrified, to be able to complete things for their own skill set. And then the reflection piece that came after that was so incredibly important for me to see that they were intimidated, that they wouldn't necessarily have sat in a room with other people and admit that they didn't know how to do some of these things. And I think we kind of take that for granted as presenters, their comfort level in being a novice. Super basic, Absolutely. But oh my gosh, it was great.
Yeah, no, powerful. Randy, you want to add to your list?
Yeah, I will, as a matter of fact. One of the tools that I think has been really used by a lot of my teachers, and it's not brand new or anything, but it was just fun seeing teachers that had maybe not paid attention to it get a lot of use out of it, is Flipgrid. And I got to meet with a teacher a few weeks ago and record a little video of him talking about Flipgrid and how it's one of several examples. I think teachers found creative ways to actually connect their kids. And what he was expressed so much excitement about is one of the biggest things was kids who were reluctant in a live Zoom chat to talk, or in certainly face-to-face setting to talk in front of their classmates, would get on there and share some really great, insightful responses and really be open and creative when they could do it just, talking to their phone and share and interact with their classes that way. It made them more comfortable and brought a lot out of them that maybe he wouldn't have expected at first. So I thought that was really cool. His name was John Lowry of Judson High School. Point. Okay,
you're definitely got the shout out award, Randy. So you've wrapped that one up, unless somebody pulls something crazy out of a hat. But Zoe, what technology are you excited about using? Have you used or seen in the last year?
Randy stole my big one. But just today I was going over, kind of practicing or doing a Flipgrid with the teacher who, I mean, it's May, right? We've been doing this all year. Who's like, oh my gosh, why didn't I know about this? Like this is amazing. And it's not just even the student who doesn't want their voice heard, or the student that doesn't want to be put on video, or you can add an image. You can take a screenshot of the work that you did at home. It's such a differentiated tool that, and not to mention it has accommodations put right in. And there's so many good things about Flipgrid. So I'm really glad that our district and other districts are using it. And again, I mean, I'm going to just be really obvious, but just Teams. We in our district use Microsoft Teams, and it has changed how we function as a district, because now, through the day from 9 to whenever I'm on, a resource teacher can Teams me. In the past, if someone needed to get a hold of me, I don't have a cell phone for work, or neither do a resource teachers. We all don't have phones in our rooms, in our classrooms. And so now they can just go on, and you can Teams, hey, do you have 5 minutes? Can I chat with you? It's just open this communication up for quick questions versus these constant email threads. And again, there's something we can continue, right? It's there. We have the infrastructure. That's all we needed before, that we were forced into it. But yeah, I mean, there's many really cool tools, but yeah, Flipgrid is awesome. And then of course the obvious one that we're on and using at the moment. So, which
Sure.
I know it's Zoom,
Yeah.
but same difference. You know what I mean?
Same thing. All right. Yeah. Excellent. Keishla.
Yeah, I would echo. I think the not just the pervasiveness of LMSs, whether that's Teams, Canvas, Schoology, right? But I think it's because districts had those before. Everybody wasn't using them. There wasn't a consistent framework and approach to them. So I've watched districts, really create process and practice behind it, because it was so important for parents to have that level of consistency of this. They were juggling multiple students across multiple educators and teachers. And so I think the usage of LMSs effectively to then connect that back to their content providers, whether that be, Discovery Education or others, to have that level of consistency. And then I think the other technology obviously is the tool that was allowing classes to connect, and that would be Zoom, what was it, WebEx, or, any of the other ones. And I think you saw the shift over time of just sort of trying to recreate your 30-seat classroom in a virtual space. And then you saw teachers say, I can do breakout rooms. I can do the, sort of that growth and trust that I don't have to just sit and whole group the whole time virtually the same way I wouldn't have done that maybe in my physical classroom. So just that willingness to take risk. Obviously, there's always concerns because you're not controlling all the spaces that everybody individually sits in and day out. But I would think just the intentional application of LMS and the connection technology has been really important to watch.
Fantastic. Well, we're kind of at the end of our time, but I wouldn't mind just throwing this last question out and give people I don't know, you got 15, 20 seconds to try to synthesize this pretty big question. You've sort of touched on them a little bit. Oh, you got a good one?
I got a good one. Yeah. So we did not mean as a district to be one-to-one necessarily. They had a plan 6-12 that was traditional. And this is, we went to 6th grade, you got your Chromebook, yada, yada. Well, now here we are at the end of, in Texas again, we as a district aren't offering virtual learning at all next year in any capacity. And so the question was, great, that means we can bring all the Chromebooks back. And I said, or we could try to maintain and leverage the teacher's comfort level, and we can make sure that they have class sets of Chromebooks that don't necessarily have to go home. First graders don't need to be carrying them around all the time anymore. But to not allow teachers to retreat back into what's comfortable and familiar, but really be able to continue moving forward. They've already got the Google Classrooms. They've already got the skill set, the knowledge. Now they maybe can explore, and I can help lead some different trainings, but to not take that step backwards. And so I'm super excited just that within my role, I can now control that decision to say, I didn't control anything. It was a group discussion. But we're not going to revert back. We're going to stay where we are and try to move it forward with more training, more support, more materials, things like that. So That's a
If
good
I,
one.
I'll just springboard if I can off of what Amber
Yep.
so
Yep.
well. And that is, we've got these resources now. And it was, if there was any positive thing about this horrible year, in the sense of the pandemic, well, for schools, it's that we were forced into investing in our technology that maybe in the past boards were like, well, I don't know, that's a lot of money for those Chromebooks. And well, it's the only way to learn that we had this year. Well, the next step for us, and this is the conversation that's being had in my own district, and it's exciting, and I'm kind of sad that I'll be stepping away when they really get the push, is now to move from this focus in online learning to using those tools to create effective blended learning environments and teach teachers how to effectively use that technology and leverage it in their classroom more effectively. So that'll be the big focus for us. That'll be the challenge in the coming years. But the nice thing is there's no discussion like in Amber's district of moving it out of the kids' hands or anything like that. And they've already started working on replacement plans and stuff like that for down the line. So that's real gratifying and very exciting to see.
So, Michael Kieschle, anybody want to add one more? Go ahead, Michael.
I'm going to take us away from the technology. I think technology will play a part in my response. But I would like to see, I know all these like national research groups are really concerned about academic gaps. They're going to start, that are going to start popping up now because of this pandemic. This a whole different thing. We're not going to talk about that part. But I think what it would be interesting is I think, you said it, like traditional schooling is so like grade based, like alpha grade based, A, B, C, D, not F anymore, but E's, I would like to see a shift towards competency based and making things more personalized and geared towards what the student actually needs and not so focused on they got an A on this test. Well, why did they? What could they do that gave them that A that you felt they needed it, that grade, right? And moving away from just A, B, C, D, E, F, or whatever it is, but competency-based, performance-based to really not only increase that rigor, but make things more relevant for our students. And I apply that to our teachers as well. What can we do as district leaders to provide our teachers with experiences that are meaningful and relevant and make it more competency-based? It's not just, oh, great, you use Google Classroom. As Randy was just saying, let's dig deeper. How could you effectively integrate Google Classroom into your physical environment to really engage your students and increase that rigor that is so necessary? So for me, I would like to see in the future a systemic change in competency-based instruction.
Cool.
Sorry, I hope that our districts next year, all of us around the entire world, I really hope that we focus on social emotional, helping kids get back into knowing how to be friends face to face. Many of my students are afraid of that. They don't know what it's going to be like to have interactions again. I think that, as much as we talk about academic gaps, I think the gap in social emotional is worse. And if we don't focus on that, the academic is going to get worse next year, not better. And I think we can't even for a second, I can't even fathom taking technology out of the hands of kids now. Imagine now them going back into school and there's no technology and they have to do everything writing after spending the last 2 years typing. So, Amber, I'm glad your board or your district is going that route, and I hope that others follow. So that's it. That's all.
All right, Keisha, I'll give you the last word on this.
Yeah, from what I've heard from all these amazing educators, this is about quality over quantity, and it's about quality experiences, whether that's on issues of technology integration, equity, social emotional learning, professional learning. Let's get to the quality. I think we've spent so much time focused on volume standards, volume curriculum outcomes, how much time we're losing. And when time got precious, we got really focused on what's important. And I think that's the thing that we hope that everybody remembers, at least for
Fantastic, people.
All I do is win, 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 no matter what. Got money on my mind, I can never get enough.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for sharing. This was fantastic. We'll have a recording, and I'm grateful for all of you being a part of my life and teaching me. And again, this time together is just another one of those great opportunities to hang out and do something we couldn't do very easily otherwise, but we did it. And I wish you all the best, and everybody else that's listening and watching the same. And so many good things to consider and ensure that we keep continuing to do and learn from moving forward. And I think there's a little bit more hope is in the air a little bit about what our next steps are. So thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll all talk soon.